Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third installment of our Parent and Family Winter Webinar Series. I'd like to kick this off by introducing Brenda Ice, who is the Senior Associate Dean and Senior Director of Residence Life.
Thank you, Mikkel. I appreciate the opportunity to join you all today. As she's indicated, I serve as our Senior Associate Dean and Director of Residential Life. I am new to Brown, but excited about the opportunities of what we will create in this residential student environment. Part of my entry into the new Brown community is actually thinking about revisioning and reimagining the residential student experience. And so the series that we're offering today, talking about living at Brown, certainly will address some of your current needs and questions that you have, but I also want to help reframe the future thinking and what we hope to accomplish over the next few years while your students are still with us or actually become alum of part of this community, about how we might shape their overall residential experience. Everything that we talk about today and every future planning is going to be rooted and grounded in 4 major strategic priorities for that of residential life, where we will focus on inclusive community, health and well-being, operational excellence, and growth and development. And through the next conversation with my illustrious team of directors here who will address some very touch points around that, know that our focus is really about shaping and supporting the student experience in wherever they show up, however they show up. Our ultimate goal is to create an overall sense of community and belonging for every student, regardless of their class year or wherever they are in their developmental or academic stage and journey here at Brown. If you find at any point during this conversation that your needs or questions still need to be addressed, by all means, we encourage you to find us, seek us out, and provide that feedback and or additional questions so that we can support you as families, and more importantly, if students are joining the conversation, for you as current or future students to know that we are a place that can resolve and support you in your journey here at Brown. I will now turn it over to my illustrious team and Mikkel to take us through some conversations and questions that were already raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Ice. And if we could go ahead and have everyone introduce themselves. Sean?
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Thompson, and I'm so happy to be with you here again. This is our second time on a webinar series, so I hope you have had enough of me. I use the he series as my pronouns, and I serve as the Director of First Year Experience in Houses here at Brown University. I've been working at Brown for the past 1.5, yeah, I'm getting to 2 years in March. So I'm really happy to be a part of your students' journey here, becoming a new Brunonian.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy Manser. I'm the Director of Residential Operations here at Brown University, and I use the She series. I've been at Brown for a little over 13.5 years, 2.5 years within this role, and I am happy to be here today. And thank you all for joining this webinar.
Scott?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Scott Helford. I'm the Director of Upper Division and Off-Campus Students. I use he, him, his. I'm excited to be able to join you today for the first time. I am newer to Brown, joined the community in October.
And Terrence?
Good afternoon. My name is Terrence Sanders. I'm the Director of Program and Theme Houses. In addition, I just acquired over in Res Life, Greek Life as well. I use the he series pronoun, and I am just here, just shy of 5 months. I joined the team in August.
Thank you all. So we've got a lot of questions, so let's dive right into those. First one, or the first group of questions, is about how residence hall assignments are determined. So we have a number of families here today who have newly admitted students. And one of the questions we got was, my daughter is an incoming first year this coming fall. Will she have a choice of residence halls, or is it a lottery system? Sean, can you talk a little bit about how first year students are assigned housing?
Absolutely. So a part of the housing questionnaire, we have a program called Bruno Beginnings. And as soon as your students have accepted their admission into Brown, they'll start to get a series of emails and correspondence from our office, the office of the dean of the college, and other campus partners. So in early June, your students will be getting a housing questionnaire. The questionnaire focuses on a student's own lifestyle choices, like how neat or messy they are, their approach to conflict mediation, how early they wake up and how late they go to sleep, and the student's study habits. Using this information, our staff works with our housing software to find the closest possible matches and assign students to spaces. After that, they will be getting their housing assignments in early to mid-August, where they can prepare for their approach to College Hill here in Providence. We have about 11 first-year buildings all spread across campus, in our North Campus and our South Campus. And I'll talk a little bit more about our buildings and further on in our presentation. But that's just really the gist of it. My biggest advice is to stay really glued to your email over the summer. We have about 3 months of getting you ready and getting you prepared to come to Brown.
Thanks, Sean. So moving on to upperclassmen, Tracy, many people had questions about how the housing selection process will work for upperclassmen next year. And is it changing from how it's been in the past? And how does the process differ depending on a student's class leader?
So thank you for that question, Mikkel. The housing selection is the process by which continuing Brown students select the on-campus housing for the following academic year. And this process consists of several phases. The first phase is the pre-selection process. This process will include students who are interested in Greek housing, special interest housing, student accessibility accommodations fall under this, as well as religious accommodations. Students who participate in the pre-selection process must accept any pre-selection offer by the deadline date, which is called super deadline day, or advise they will then be participating in the housing selection process. That brings us to the next phase, which is the housing selection called phase 1. In this process, this is the group formation process. Students form these groups to select housing in phase 2, their specific housing assignment that they'd like, in spaces located together, and these groups can be formed anywhere from 1 to 8. Students who have accepted thematic or special interest housing options can search and form groups of other students who have also selected in these options. And juniors and seniors can form groups with other juniors and seniors and select housing during phase 2. As well as mixed groups of sophomores, juniors, and seniors can form groups and will select housing along with other sophomores. And this is important to know. If your student is a senior and wants to be grouped with a sophomore, they will be selecting their housing during the sophomore selection time slot. And then also sophomores and students can form groups with other sophomores and select housing after the full junior and senior groups. The next phase of the housing selection process is actually phase 2. And this is where they actually select their room. So as part of the question, it was asked if there were changes that were being made. And within this particular phase, one of the changes to the process from last year is that juniors or seniors, the junior and senior selection process and the sophomore selection process will now be taking place on different dates, with juniors and seniors choosing housing first. Previously, that process ran simultaneously during the same time and had access to different buildings to select depending on your grade level. I want to give a couple of examples of the differences between class years and the time in selection. So juniors and senior groups, students with class years of semester 5 and above for the fall 2020 will occur the first dates of the selection. And then sophomore groups, mixed groups of students, those are the juniors or seniors selecting once again to live with a sophomore, they will select at the end of the housing selection. Lastly, we have the final phase, which is the late assignment phase. This will be ongoing following phase 2. Students who do not meet the deadline to participate in the housing selection process will fall under this phase. Students who request to live on campus following the deadline date will fall under this phase. And students who are unable to participate in the housing selection or do not select housing by the closing of the housing selection will also fall under this timeframe. Regards to those additional changes that we made, we have a couple more to note. Special interest and theme housing is now self-selection. So they will be choosing their own particular room. Previously, those groups were formed and their room assignment was done by Res Life to a specific room. And this year, special interest and theme will have that option to choose their own room. Upper division housing will be available to students now regardless of class year. So buildings previously designated as junior, or senior, or sophomore only will now be available for all upper division, junior, senior, and sophomores. Lastly, I'd like to note the residential website, Residential Life website, will be updated to provide details regarding the housing process and dates when it will take place. And everything that I've discussed will be included in this information. Communications will also go out to every rising upper division student with housing selection process information. And first year students who are rising sophomores will also receive additional information as they will be selecting housing for the first time, and we'd like to inform them further regarding that.
Thank you, Tracy. Really appreciate that detail. Next question was something that came up frequently. It's about requesting to live off campus. Scott, can you talk about the process to request off campus living, and also how many semesters are students required to live on campus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to start with the requirement first. So Brown has a 6 semester on campus in residence requirement for all students. This means that students residing on campus as a first year in their first semester would not be able to move off campus into the fall of their senior year or the start of their 7th semester. Brown has made this decision because we feel that there's a huge longitudinal benefit really to our student population where we can co-create together and in partnership with Res Life, the residential peer leaders with their peers, a dynamic community over the 6th semester. It allows for cross-year mentoring, relationships to be built, and a foundation really to be laid for those students who choose to move off starting in their 7th semester. It's important to note that really students should not sign any lease until they've completed those 6 semesters. There's a part that we want to make sure that families know is if a student goes out and signs that lease, they do run the risk of either needing to break that lease with that landlord or paying that lease and also paying for the housing on campus. Now, for that 7th semester and students looking to move off campus, typically into their senior year, they would do that in the spring of their junior year. This year, the intention process that they need to complete, that email will go out in January. So I mentioned that because it's really important as families or students who are on the line to pay attention to those emails. It will have that clearly laid out of how those students entering that 7th semester will give us their intention to move off campus. And so that's that process.
Thanks, Scott. So we're going to move on to the different types of housing facilities on the Brown University campus. As many of you know, there's a wide range of different types of buildings available. Tracy, can you describe some of the various residence halls that are available to students and different examples of room layouts?
Thank you, Mikkel. So Brown has a beautiful campus with 47 residence halls that date back to the early 1800s and as recent as 2021 with our newest residence hall, Sternlich Commons. And this provides a variety of unique spaces across all those residence halls. As Sean noted earlier, we do have 11 of those halls that are dedicated specific to first year housing. So to describe some of the variances, in traditional halls, which are generally corridor style housing, and some of our smaller houses, We have single, double, triple, and quad occupancy spaces with shared baths and shared kitchens in most of those residence halls. Additionally, we have in our suite apartment spaces, we also have single, double, triple occupancy rooms, and these spaces can include, but do not all have kitchens, common areas, or suite bathrooms.
Thanks, Tracy. This next question I'm going to direct to Dean Ice. Many parents mentioned that as they were touring campus, they noticed the new construction on residence halls. And they're interested in learning more about the timeline for that construction, and if any of the current students or students entering in the fall will have opportunity to live in any of these halls. Also, additionally, there's the question about will current residence hall or currently functional halls be having any sort of renovations?
Thank you for that. So yes, we are quite fortunate that for as much as we have a deep history and a commitment to our current residential spaces, we have been fortunate to receive funding and resources to be able to add new housing stock by way of Sternlicht Commons, which is at 450 Brook Street, which is became open this past fall, and our current construction project that will take up 250 and 259 Brook Street, which will give us an increase in additional 350 beds, which should, as everyone has indicated to me, we are on track with the timing of this fall of 2023. We will open and have that space available to our residential student population. Where we find ourselves right now is still trying to determine the appropriate program that will go in the space. And that includes considering the type of class year that would be a part of it, whether or not we would actually concentrate that as part of one of our interest communities, a blend between the two of general student population and possibly some of our program and theme communities being in the shared space. So the possibility is great that there could be an opportunity for your students, but we have not solidified such that we can say today, this is who would be assigned to those particular units, in part because as we grow and build this program, we're also thinking about our overall residential housing stock and where we might be able to think differently about how we house our students and more importantly, how we program within those spaces. So for as much as we're getting new construction, we're also taking a hard and deep look at our current residential spaces and saying, where else can we create a welcoming environment that doesn't always have to come with new construction or new and shiny, that there are ways in which we can complement our current structures and creating that sense of place and belonging. So in addition to the new construction, we're in conversation with our facilities maintenance and our capital project and planning and thinking about our overall renewal process, such that we can either take buildings offline for an extended period of time or make some incremental changes over the next few years to create that type of home for our students as opposed to a place to lay their head.
Thank you, Dean Ice. We continue to get a lot of questions about first year student accommodations. Sean, can you give a little bit more insight into the halls where first year students live and what the layouts for those rooms look like, and specifically the bathrooms?
Sure thing. So like we mentioned before, we have 11 buildings in our portfolio for first year students. It's split into two campuses. We have the North Campus and the South Campus. The North Campus is also known as Pembroke Campus, and South Campus is known as our Keeney Quad. We primarily have we have double and triple occupancy rooms, and we have some singles which are often utilized to support medical housing accommodations. Students have the opportunity to apply for special interest housing options such as quiet housing, substance-free housing, and single-sex housing, which they can indicate on their housing questionnaire. Like we said before, we have traditional corridor spacing with bathrooms that are located on each floor of every building that we hope to have students have access to throughout their time living with us. I wanted to say that The questionnaire will be available early in June, and we'll be making those housing assignments in August. But really think about marking this date for orientation starting September 1st. Okay, and we will be having a lot of info sessions about housing, how to build connection and relationship with your roommates, and before you get to campus as well.
Thanks for bringing up roommates, Sean. That's our next topic. Tracy, how are roommates paired together? And does this differ from year to year?
Thank you, Mikkel. So first year students are paired together based on the answers they provide in their housing questionnaire, which Sean had noted earlier in the webinar. These answers are then fielded through our housing management system to determine the closest possible matches. In some unique situations, staff is also going to utilize those same metrics and hand pair individuals together. And I want to emphasize the determine closest possible matches, because very rarely do we get an absolute perfect match. For upper class students during the housing selection process, they form groups, as I noted earlier, in phase 1 of the housing selection process, and then they select housing together during phase 2 of the process. For students with vacant spaces, either in their individual rooms or their suite apartments, we have now begun collecting lifestyle questions during the year from students of all classes during phase 1 of the housing selection process, so that we can pair students based on those preferences if there is a need mid-year or during our room change processes. And having those student preferences up front, it expedites the process and provides a higher level of match if a room process is requested. Sean did note earlier those lifestyle preferences, and I'll just reiterate, they range anywhere from sleeping habits, study habits, room upkeep habits, and conflict management approaches, to name a few.
Thank you, Tracy. We had a number of questions from family members of student athletes asking about whether or not student athletes are housed together. Scott, can you talk about that?
Sure. Our student athletes certainly do, and in many cases live together. However, there's not a specific residence hall or community set aside just for student athletes. It's worth noting that from residential life that there's not an expectation that student athletes live together. For our first year students athletes who live together, that's typically done when we are informed that they're arriving early to campus. And so we're matching in that way. And again, that's when they're coming for preseason. For our returning non-first year student athletes, they're able to participate in the housing process that Tracy outlined earlier. And so during that process, they can go through in pairs or larger groups looking at suites and living accommodations that they would be looking to explore in their sophomore, junior, or senior year.
Thank you. This next question is for Terrence. This is about the new wellness residence hall and what kind of programming is offered there. And then additionally, what other types of special interest housing is available on campus?
Yeah, of course. So it's the wellness community and at the Stern Lake Commons in partnership with Be Well Health Promotions. There is an application process that students go through. We're actually going to be in the process of getting ready to open that now. So students can apply to live into, to get into wellness. And then we have a review process of a rubric that we go through. And then from that, we'll choose which students will get to go in there for the next academic year. I can say at this time, it is for sophomores and above. First years are not able to live in that community. And then in reference to programming from the application, the Be Well Health team hires wellness peer educators. Residential Life has residential peer leaders, and they utilize some of the information from the students' interest of what they think of wellness and what wellness means to them to create standard programming, as well as we've done some partnership with athletics. Not every student is comfortable working out in a gym, so hopefully starting next fall, athletics, we'll be bringing some of those activities into the building so students don't feel like they have to go out. Other housing that we have on campus that wellness is a theme house, so it's predetermined already, as well as our Greek houses on campus. We have 10 Greek houses, and then we have 10 program houses. When we think about special interest housing, Sean mentioned this already, but these are not predetermined. It's based on the student's interest, but that's substance-free housing, quiet housing, which is 24 hours quiet time, single-sex housing, and then religious housing request.
Thanks, Terrence. The next question is about how residence halls are organized by gender. And I noticed we had a few questions in the chat today about that too. So Tracy, is it possible to request a roommate of an opposite gender? And then also, can you talk more about how the different buildings are organized by gender?
Thank you again for that question, Mikkel. So essentially all of our residence halls are co-ed. Some specific floors or suites are designated as single sex within our special interest communities. Because upper division students form their own housing groups, they are able to include members of different gender identities and choose to live in rooms with members of those identities in any of our housing options. How the residence halls are defined by that is determined by the number of students who have those requests per year within any given year.
Thank you, Tracy. The next question is about another type of specialized housing, and that's the Greek houses that we have on campus. Terrence, can you talk about that?
Yes. So we have 10 Greek houses on campus, and even though we call them houses, they are not a single building just for that Greek organization. They range from local, regional to national chapters. And they also range from gender inclusive fraternities and sororities to gender specific. They are clusters of rooms within a building. They're all based on a Riston quad, which many would consider towards this middle center of campus. Students that live in there have to be a sophomore, but you can still be a part of that Greek organization and not necessarily live in that Greek house. It's completely up to you. First years this semester will be the time they'll start doing recruitment and accepting bids. And this will be the opportunity for any current first years to kind of go to their socials and to see if they're interested in going to live into that Greek house. And then they have events for the communities and the spaces that are assigned to them inside of those residential buildings.
Thanks, Terrence. Now we're going to talk about life inside the halls. Many parents asked about services and support for students to adjust to living away from home. Can you speak a little bit about how Brown supports the transition to life on campus, Scott?
Sure. I think we can all agree that moving away from home for the first time and really coming to university, whether you're coming directly from your home or from boarding school, can be filled with emotions. As you heard from Sean, we have an orientation program that all of our first year students go through. However, we can also agree that coming back to university as a returning student can also be filled with emotions. So we have a number of resources that are available in closest proximity. Each of the halls has a residential peer leader, so RPL, who can help with programming, meeting one-on-one with students, helping navigate roommate conflicts or disagreements, taking a look at that community norming at the smallest level. When we roll that back a little bit, we have a full Department of Residential Life staff that starts with area coordinators and then the 4 directors that are on this call. It's not uncommon for us to meet with students to talk through homesickness, to talk through transitional concerns, academic concerns. When academic really comes up, we partner closely with student support services and the wonderful staff there and make connections and introductions. Brown has an amazing health and counseling services that are available to students. They're really well positioned to help students who might be navigating health, physical or mental health for the first time without the familial units there. Getting involved on a campus is really critical. So Student Activities Office is here. It's something that, students want to explore clubs and meeting students outside of the residence hall. That can go a long way towards aiding transition and social connectedness. We also have an administrator on call, and that's really for after business hours to deal with emergency issues where students might be, experiencing increased transitional concerns or experiencing something for the first time where they really need a higher level of response. And so those are just some of the ways that we transition and partner as Residential Life Living to help students come on and feel that they're part of the community.
Thanks, Scott. And I'd also ask people to reference the video that was posted for Finding Community at Brown, which also gets into this topic in a little bit more depth. Next question is about the residents' peer leaders, which Sean, you mentioned a little bit before, also called RPLs. How do you become an RPL? And then what kind of training do these RPLs receive?
Great question. I'd love to answer this question. So our RPLs are upper division students who apply and are selected to serve on our for our campus residents by engaging them in community building, conflict resolution, programming and events, and health and well-being initiatives. They live on the floors with our students and some serve in a mentoring capacity for the students for their collegiate career. We have a very rigorous application, interview, and selection process where we assess students' talents, skills, and their commitment to providing and engaging a safe environment for our students. They are lovely individuals, they're fun, they're multifaceted, they're multidimensional, and we have the honor of working with them and serving them in support of our campus community. So the RPLs also, because a lot of their role is so crucial to the work that we do here in Residential Life, they participate in a fall training and in a winter training. And then they also receive ongoing education and development from our area coordinators, like Scott mentioned before, who are our live-in professional staff members. We train them on topics such as finding community, building empathy, developing self and community care, responding to students in concern and crisis, and creating fun and engaging programs. We recruit these upper division students, primarily sophomore and above, every year for the following academic year. So these roles are academic term. We hope to have them from September all the way till May in support of the various activities that we have here on campus.
Sean, and I just saw a question come up in the Q&A about the ratio of RPLs to students. Do you have that information?
Yes, so depending on their residential hall and the floors, because we have different configurations, we hope to aim for approximately 25 first year students to one residential peer leader. So they have an opportunity to really engage in intentional relationships and development. So that works out to, like I said before, about 25 students to one RPL.
Thank you. And next question is to Scott. This is a very general question about the campus and the environment around the campus. What resources are available for incoming out-of-state students to familiarize themselves with the life at Brown and the campus surroundings, including campus maps, academic calendars? And then another specific question related to this is, do students need transportation in order to get necessities in the area, such as haircuts and medical or dental appointments?
Yeah, I love this question. Again, as I mentioned, joining Brown in October, coming from out of state, this does hit home for me. I think there's a ton of information about Brown available on our websites that's been alluded to a couple times. You can find everything from your campus maps, and you can drill down looking for specific buildings. Academic calendars are there. You can find information on courses. As far as special events that are happening, lectures, social engagement, social activities, activism, you can also find that on the calendars. It's really important to add that when students come to campus, there's also listservs and clubs and organizations that they'll sign up for that will even be more specific. Around kind of campus, one of the things that there's a number of grab and go and sit down restaurants right on Thayer Street next to campus. For the haircut piece, there's 13 salons within a 1 mile radius of campus. You can see I don't really use one, but they are there. There's 3 right on Thayer Street, which is next to campus. There are 2 supermarkets within a 18-minute walk of campus, including Whole Foods. For transportation, there's a really amazing program that Brown works with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, where with your Brown ID, you can get free bus and trolley services within the state. And so that's ways that you can navigate the city, but also get further away down to Newport and other things if you want to explore the state as large. Some students will use Uber and Lyft. You don't really need to. And then, of course, a good old-fashioned throw on some sneakers and walking shoes and get out there and explore. So I think it really would depend on where you're at. There is also a campus shuttle, and that information and the routes are available online. And so those are some places that I would encourage you to start. And then, of course, good old Google, if you have a certain food or preference, Google that out and it will pop right up as well.
Thanks, Scott. Next question's for Tracy, and this is in regards to students who might find themselves in a situation where there's a problem with their room or the bathroom. So for example, if there's a broken screen in their room or there's hair clogging the drain, what's a student to do in that situation?
Thank you, Mikkel. So at times, an issue does arise that warrants a need for repair, maintenance, or custodial request. And the university's facility maintenance department is available 24/7 to service these students' requests. Students are advised how to submit a work order through Brown's facility management reporting system, Plan On. And students are also advised that they can call the service response at facilities management if there is an urgent concern, and that is 24/7. And the area to locate where to submit a service request is on Brown's facilities management website. And it is clearly marked that it's service requests. Additionally, the Office of Residential Life has facilities and operation coordinators, and those full-time staff during the day are also on hand to answer any questions that a student may have regarding their request or their concern. But the most efficient and usually quickest way to get a repair, maintenance, or custodial request addressed would be to submit that request as soon as possible directly by the student. I also want to add that Brown is also in the process of adding QR codes to the room exterior signage to simplify the reporting process in the future through Plan On and easily identify the space that the repair is located in. So essentially what will happen is the student will use their phone, they will scan the code, and then that code will take them right to the reporting system to submit that work order and work them through the necessary questions, and will have already identified that space that the repair is located in. So we're excited about that process when that comes aboard, and it'll certainly be help with the ease for students as well.
Thanks, Tracy. And just to stay with you for a minute, there was a question about where to find a map of the residence halls. Can you speak to that?
So great question. The facilities management website, once again, has a page that's dedicated to maps. There's an interactive map that students and visitors can utilize. Additionally, as it relates to the layouts to the rooms, as a follow-up to the earlier question about room configurations, once students have access within Brown and have an email, they also can go onto that website and actually view room layouts for a specific building that is on that website and that mapping system specific to the interactive mapping system.
Thanks, Tracy. And we had a question about when there are disagreements between roommates, what's the process for resolving that? Or, how does the university handle that? Sean, would you be able to answer that question?
Absolutely. So we really work towards solving conflict and recognizing that conflict is a part of our everyday. So we really think that this is an educational moment for our students to engage in really meaningful conversations with each other. The first thing that we have our students do is create a roommate agreement. And in that roommate agreement, we pull some things from their housing questionnaire that they individually submitted, and we share that with their roommate so that they have really great conversations about the use of the room, quality time, private time, things of that nature. When you're having guests, when would you like to study? If you would like to, create a friendship and, grab food together and things of that nature. If conflict arises from there, the first point of contact is our RPLs, and the RPLs have a conversation and do a mediation with them. So they determine whether or not the conflict can be resolved or cannot be resolved. If it can't be resolved, then we do take it up to our area coordinator. Our area coordinators are a little bit more skilled in conflict mediation, and we would hope to have some kind of mediation between the students. After that process, if their situation cannot be solved from an RPL mediation or an area coordinator mediation, then we move to moving the roommate to another open area. We have created new kind of like a timeline for that. So in the first 2 weeks, our students are going through shopping period. So already their schedules are all over the place. So some of our students might shop, the term shop, attend classes to get a better feel of if they would like to take this for the rest of the semester. So our students tend to shop roughly 5 to 8 classes. So their schedules are all over the place. They're also joining clubs and organizations. They're also really exploring Providence. So we feel like all those external things that are happening to them really can contribute to some homesickness or some uneasiness about being on campus. So we take that into consideration. And after the shopping period, then the students can request a roommate change, a room change. And then we hope to accommodate that dependent on other situations on campus. We also have another form where students can do a vacancy fill-in. So if they know that a room is vacant, or if they know a friend in another building or another floor has a vacancy, they can request to move into that room for a better fit later on in the semester.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Another question that's popped up a few times in the Q&A is about substance-free housing. Terrence, can you go into a little bit more detail about substance-free housing?
Yes, of course. So substance-free housing, like I said, it's special interest, so it's not a predetermined location. This is going to be based off of students who have elected to go into that space, but it is committed to a substance-free lifestyle. That is, while they are in residence, they are going to be abiding by not being under the influence of any alcohol or any drug use, recreational or illegal. And then they have specialized programming, which those students are a part of, that helps continue to promote what it means to live in substance-free housing. And then they have the ability to remain in substance-free housing as long as they don't break any of those rules. So they are not allowed to partake in any of those things while they are at least within that residential hall, because it's keeping it out of that space. In many cases, it could be someone who had an issue with abusing any sort of drugs or alcohol in the past. And so they're choosing that space because they know that won't be around them or add any sort of temptation.
Thanks, Terrence. We've had a number of questions too about food allergies and how that works into the Res Life experience. Dean Ice, can you talk about how accommodations are handled in room selections?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we'll want to make sure folks are aware, and we have already posted this on our website, is that we do have a more comprehensive and enhanced accommodations process to support our students so they truly feel like they can live comfortably given some preconditions or as things evolve over time here, residentially speaking. As we think about this process, we serve as kind of the vessel or vehicle to take the information in and then collaborate with our various campus partners to ensure that they have the necessary information to provide them with the appropriate accommodation. And so in instances where it is medically motivated or tied to an accessibility, we partner with our student access services offices, or SAS, to support those students who have accommodations that impact their housing. There will be questions that appear in our housing contract or in the questionnaire that allows students to also provide additional context and information if there are not necessarily documented concerns related that would warrant SAS to intervene from an accommodation standpoint, but information I think that is worthy for us to be aware of so that we can actually assist them in the appropriate placement of that. We have provided the link to our About Us in Residential Life for you to learn more about our overall accommodations process, but particularly for our new students joining us in the fall, you will get more comprehensive information as we roll out that information, as Sean alluded to. Once you fully accept and join our community, we'll make all of that information available to you at that time.
Thank you, D-Nice. I'll take a few more odds and ends from the Q&A box. One is about, I think this is probably from a first year parent or family member, is about laundry. I'm not sure who on the panel wants to take that, but if you can explain how the laundry services work here.
So I can take that. Thank you, Mikkel. So all the residence halls do have laundry within their spaces, and what essentially will happen is students, when they receive their brown ID cards, they also have the option to put bear bucks on that card, which is our student questing mechanism. And they would then utilize that card to actually access the machines. But they do have laundry service within all of their residence halls.
Thanks, Tracy. And I think this next one is probably best for Sean. There were a lot of questions about when the move-in dates are and orientation activities. I'm not sure if you have all the information quite yet on the move-in dates, but if you can just share some information about what move-in looks like, and if you do have any dates this time, if you want to share those.
Absolutely. So if you go to our website at brown.edu and put in the academic calendar, you'll always have a reference to the major programmatic events on campus. So in there, you can note that orientation will start September 1st through the 6th. I have the opportunity and the luxury of coordinating the new student orientation process for all our incoming students. But prior to that, move-in for first year students will be on August 31st. It's a full day affair. So you will have the opportunity to select time slots when you'll be able to come onto campus, and then they'll be directed by North Campus or South Campus. So say for instance, your student gets to live in Andrews Hall. They have the opportunity to select Andrews Hall once they get their housing assignment. Then they select their time slot. So it could be like a 15-minute to 30-minute time slot, because at that point, we're hoping to move in at approximately 900 to 1,000 first-year students on campus in one day. During move-in, you'll have the opportunity to meet some of our orientation leaders. You'll have the ability to meet some of our residential peer leaders, and they'll help move you into your residential space. And then you can get an opportunity to explore campus and everything like that. I also do have the opportunity to be a liaison with our pre-orientation programming. So students will have the opportunity to apply for I think we have about 6 to 7 pre-orientation programs. That application will actually go out in beginning of June or middle of June. So the students have the opportunity to move onto campus and have a smaller cohort experience about spirit, tradition, or a specific facet of campus life. That is also inclusive of our international students. Most of our international students will move on for our IMP program, was our International Mentoring Program. So they'll be able to move on to campus a little bit earlier and meet with other international students and get a social acclimation to what it's like to be a Brown student in the United States as well. So typically those pre-orientation programs last about 3 to 4 days before new student move-in, which is August 31st, and then new student orientation for all of our incoming students will happen on September 1st.
Thanks, Sean. And I can answer a question that was related to that about parent programming for the same time period during orientation. And yes, there will definitely be some parent programming as well, and that will be communicated out with the rest of the orientation information. My next question is going to be for Scott, and there was someone wondering if housing is guaranteed for all undergraduate students, even upperclassmen.
So yeah, I think as long as students are interested in remaining on campus, we do provide them that housing. A large portion of our seniors do go off, and they preference that, but we make a commitment. There's different pieces that come into play with that, and that's all explained in the housing lottery process that Tracy outlined. And so that is communicated, but at this point, we strive to meet those needs, and most of our seniors do move off though.
Thank you. And we still have lots of questions, but I think that's all we have time for today. I'm going to ask Dean Ice to wrap things up for us, and then we will be at the end of our hour together. But I do want to thank everybody on this panel today who joined us to talk about the living experience at Brown. It's very much appreciated. Dean Ice.
Thank you all for joining us today. As you can tell, we provided you with a lot of information, and I think we only scratched the surface of all the services and support that we provide our students in this residential environment. We will continue to serve as an added layer of resources for you, so by all means, continue to reach out to us, revisit the webinar from time to time, and get the information that you need. We want to make sure that the residential experience is everything that you need and want it to be. And so for us to accomplish that, we need your feedback and support through this process, both as a student and as a family or parent member. You are as much a part of this community as the students living with us. We want and need to hear from you so we can ensure that we're doing all the things we need to do to create a wonderful Brown experience for you, and so that you want to come back and speak fondly of your experience while living with us in community. Thank you again to my leadership team for your time and wisdom today through today's conversation.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.